Hey, what's up? Chris Seiter here, founder of Ex-Boyfriend Recovery, and today I'm going to be teaching you about the 5 most essential ways to make your ex miss you. My biggest recommendation to you going forward is to actually pause this video and look below in the description. There I've put together a special quiz designed to answer the question of if you have a chance of getting your ex back or not, so that you know you're not wasting your time watching a video like this. So again, all you have to do if you want to figure out if you have a chance of getting your ex back is simply look in the description link below this YouTube video. You'll see a link that will lead to the quiz on my website, and then answering the questions on that quiz will get you an idea of what kind of chance you have of getting your ex back. Then, once you understand that, we can start focusing on how to make your ex miss you. So I'll wait. Again, look in the description link below the YouTube video, click on the link there, and we will get you taken care of. After you've taken that, you'll watch this video.
Today we're going to be talking about 5 essential ways to make your ex miss you. This is without a doubt one of the most popular topics I get on my YouTube channel, on my website, and on my other website. People just want to know how to make their exes miss them. And over the years, I've found very specific things that work. And today we're going to be talking about 5 of those essential ways. So the first way I want you to keep in mind, especially when you're trying to make your ex miss you, is you need to understand when you need to end interactions. If you've heard any of my recent YouTube videos, you may have recognized this. This is actually a little graph I put together to kind of dictate or show you what the average conversation with an ex looks like, right? It starts out and the satisfaction slowly improves to a point and then slowly kind of goes down, right? That's the average sort of trajectory of a conversation, of what the quality of the conversation with your ex is going to look like. Now, every graph, assuming you could graph every conversation you ever had with your ex, is going to look different, right? But when I look at my clients and people that I've worked with, this is what the average trajectory looks like. There's always a peak and there's always a low point. Typically, that low point happens at the end. Now, the issue I see with most people that I work with is they're so eager to talk to their exes that they wait until the very end of the conversation, when the satisfaction has waned, to end that conversation. They want to take up as much time as possible with their ex. And it makes sense. You want your ex back. You finally get them on the phone or you finally get them in person and you want to squeeze that time dry. Now, the issue with this requires us to back up a little bit and talk about something called the peak end rule. Now, the peak end rule is a scientific theory that they found when they actually asked people, hey, how do you remember experiences? Now, contrary to popular belief, we don't remember experiences based on the entire experience. The entire experience is too much to process. The brain just can't handle it. So what the brain does is it actually focuses in on 2 specific points: the peak, or the most satisfying part of the experience, and the end of that experience. Right now, the issue is most people wait until the end of their conversations to end the conversation, right? We waited until we've sort of worn out our welcome. Now, if we consult the peak end rule, it's pretty easy to understand that you're actually, by ending the conversation when it's at its least satisfying point, you're highlighting the end for the peak end rule. So that instead of them thinking about the peak or the most important or exciting part or satisfying part of the experience, they're instead remembering arguably the worst part of the experience. Now, my recommendation to people who want to make their exes miss them is, instead of focusing on ending your conversation at the end of the conversation, thereby basically highlighting the end of the peak end rule, end the conversation at the high point. End it at the peak so that your peak is your end. Right? Now, great stories are excellent at doing this. They ramp up the tension. They ramp up the satisfying aspects of the story and end it at a point where you're sitting there thinking, no, I want more. I want more. You need to do the same thing in your conversations with your ex. Don't end your conversation at the end. End it at the peak. And that is the first way to help make your ex miss you. The second way is to achieve the outside looking in aura. And I'd like to tell you a couple of stories to really highlight what this is. Right? My daughter, we took my daughter to, if you don't know, I have a small 3-year-old daughter. We took her to the park a few days ago. And as we take her to the park, the thing you need to understand about this park is she's played on just about every single jungle gym or swing or slide you can imagine. There's only one thing she won't do, and that's this little blue airplane jungle gym that kind of like rocks back and forth. Now, normally she avoids this thing like the plague, but this particular day that we took her there were actually 3 kids playing on it, right? Rocking back and forth. She sees that and immediately starts screaming, me, I want to play. This is a perfect example of what the outside looking in sort of aura can do. It's when someone feels left out, they want to be left in. Right now, you may be looking at this and feeling or thinking like, oh, well, okay, how does that even apply to me or my situation? This is a kid's example. Well, let me tell you a different story. This is a story of me and my best friend, right? So looking back, when I look at our success with girls, there's me, who was not very good with girls, and there's my best friend, who was great with girls. A few years ago, when I was 19, so I guess this is probably like 11 years ago. When I was 19, 11 years ago, I developed a crush, and I invited my crush out to attend a football game with me. There was like a football game going on in my town. I invited her, and she said yes. And then she decided she wanted to invite a few people. And these few people that she wanted to invite were her friends, but they also knew my best friend. And my best friend is one charming SOB. And I grew worried that if I brought my best friend along, he would hijack my crush and all of her friends, and I would be left out to dry. So I literally said I cannot invite him. Of course, we went out, had a good time. Pictures were posted on Facebook I think it was MySpace at the time was the big thing that just dates me. And my friend found out, and he immediately was very livid with the fact that I hadn't invited him. Now, why am I telling you these stories? Well, I'm telling you this story because if you can create or cultivate this aura with your ex, if you can make him or her feel like they are on the outside looking in, that you're doing fun stuff without them, they're naturally going to grow jealous and want to be there. And it's a great way to highlight sort of the fact that they can miss you, or highlight or get them to act the way you want them to act. So that's the second big recommendation I would make to you. The third recommendation is actually to create a riddle. When I looked at researching how to make your ex miss you, the one consistency among all the experts was be mysterious, right? But what does that mean? What does mystery mean? That's a good question. Ultimately, I think in order to answer it, I need to tell you about actually one of my favorite stories of all time. In 1997, a Japanese manga was released, a manga novel, which is kind of like a mix between a comic book and an actual story written with words, was released, called One Piece. It is still going today, almost 20 years later, right? That is volume 1 there on the left, and that, I believe, is volume 89 on the right. For 20 years, this specific story has been going. Now, how do you keep a story going for 20 years and still retain readership? And to put this in perspective, One Piece is kind of a secret juggernaut. It has actually outsold Superman and Batman throughout history and pure sales of comic books, which is mind-blowing. Now, obviously, Superman and Batman probably make more money than One Piece because they have movies, and One Piece is never going to get turned into a movie. But why is this story so interesting? Well, it actually does something called the jellyfish theory. Now, one of my favorite shows going on right now is a show called Patriot, and Patriot is kind of interesting in the fact that it talks about this analogy of jellyfish, how when you try to kill a jellyfish, it actually basically just splits in two and becomes 2 jellyfish. Basically, you solve one problem, it creates 2 more. Now, One Piece does an excellent job of this, right? it creates riddles, right? It creates some hook that makes you wanting more. You sit there and think to yourself, I want to figure out what happens next. I want the answer to that question. And when that answer finally comes, not only does it blow your mind, but it creates 2 more riddles that you're going to want to answer. And you keep following these riddles, and soon you're just wrapped up into this world and you can't get enough of it. Another analogy I like to use is actually to quote Shrek. No, Shrek once said,
No, not really, no.
For your information, there's a lot more to ogres than people think.
Example?
Example? Okay, ogres are like onions.
They stink?
Yes. No.
Oh, they make you cry?
No.
Oh, you leave them out in the sun, they get all brown, start sprouting little white hairs.
No. Layers. Onions have layers. Ogres have layers. Onions have layers? You get it. We both have layers.
ogres have layers, right? You peel back an onion and one layer comes off, but there's another layer there to peel back. You peel that off. Hey, you're getting closer to the middle, but there's still another layer, and so on and so forth. The biggest issue I see with people who go on dates with their ex is they just give themselves entirely over. There's nothing for their ex to learn. There's no layers for them to peel back and get fascinated by. There's no one piece sort of riddle to solve, right? Where you solve one riddle and then it creates 2 more and you want to solve those, and pretty soon they multiply. You're not supposed to give yourself entirely over to your ex. Instead, you slowly open up to them. You slowly create something that's riddle-worthy that will make them want to learn more. And then once they peel that layer back, there's something else behind. And slowly but surely, they'll get wrapped up into you, much like they get wrapped up into stories like One Piece or analogies like Patriot, where you solve one problem or create 2, and it creates 2 more. This is something that I think people really need to grasp. Don't give yourself entirely over to your ex. Instead, give them a riddle about yourself. Maybe it's sort of like, I wonder why he or she is like this. And watch as they slowly ask questions to get to the bottom of why you were acting that way. And then they solve that little thing. They say, oh, maybe they're this way because they've always, wanted to be a ballerina. I don't know. This is just a weird example. And then once they solve that, it creates another interesting riddle for them to want to solve. Well, why does she want to be a ballerina? Why does he want to be a ballerina? Hey, there are men ballerina too. Weird example, weird analogy, but here's my point. Don't give yourself entirely over to your ex. Let them peel back the layers and get invested into you. All right, so what is the 4th way? Well, the 4th way is to pretty simply go on dates. I used to be a big believer in not pushing people to go on dates after they go through a breakup, right? Sometimes there's nothing more horrifying than facing the reality of, hey, you need to go on a date with someone else, especially when you're trying to get your ex back. Some people want to vomit at going on a date with someone else. They can't imagine their life without their ex. And yet, one consistency I see throughout men or women who miss their exes, and this really ties into that outside looking in thing, is that when they see their ex with someone else, it creates this fear of loss, which creates this urgency for them to act. They feel like some other person is enjoying the benefits of you. I think it's important to go on dates. And there's a couple of reasons. Number one, it really harps on the fear of loss. It raises the stakes. Right now, your ex probably believes that they can get you whenever they want. By going on a date, you indicate to them that's not true. By going on a date, maybe looking like you're having fun with someone else, maybe creating that aura of they're on the outside looking in, really makes them realize they could lose you forever. And once they realize that, the stakes are there. And that's what you need to have happen. So what's way number 5? Well, way number 5 is accidentally leaving something behind. And for this one, we have a cool story with my wife. My wife and I were in a long distance relationship for about 6 months before we actually found a way to close the distance and move in together. And then Eventually, we got married, I think, like a year later or something. But how? How did we survive that long distance relationship? Well, one of the interesting things that we sort of, I guess, habits we got into is we would see each other at least once a month. In other words, I would either travel to visit her or she would either travel to visit me, and we'd see each other one time a month on average. Well, there was one time that she visited me and she was smart enough to leave her perfume behind. Now, the thinking here is really interesting. She accidentally, which she later told me it wasn't an accident, it was by design, left her perfume behind so that I'd be left with it for a month, and hopefully I'd open it up and smell it and it would remind me of her. And those exact things happened. You can use this tactic with pretty much anything. A jacket, a purse, perfume. Generally speaking, it needs to be natural. And this is actually a completely natural example. My mother-in-law was here a couple of weeks ago. And she, I think this was not on purpose, but she accidentally left her sunglasses behind. Right? The key here is to make it look natural. Perfume was natural in my wife's case because at the time, she was at my place, right? She was sleeping over at my place, so it was natural for her to bring clothes, perfumes, makeup, all of that stuff. And my wife, in a frantic scramble at the end of a couple of hours before she has to leave, has to get her things together. It's normal for her to accidentally leave perfume behind, but it wasn't an accident. It was by design. She wanted to enact my sense of smell and sort of associate herself with that smell so that I'd be thinking about her and miss her even more. The other thing that this clever tactic can do is it can guarantee another instant date. Once you realize your glasses have been left behind, your perfume has been left behind, you can reach out to your ex and say, "Oh my God, I think I left my perfume behind." Sometimes your ex can reach out to you. "Hey, I think you lost your glasses or you left them behind." It's a perfect segue into that next date.
Those were the 5 most important ways to make your ex miss you. Now, I don't expect you to understand everything I just talked about. If you have questions, that's great. Ask your questions to me in the YouTube video comments below this YouTube video. I've been trying to make an attempt to answer as many of these questions as I possibly can. So if you have any questions about anything, even unrelated to this video, simply ask us in the YouTube comments below. The other thing I'd like you to do is actually look around this video and subscribe to our channel. Anytime you subscribe to our channel, not only will it give you updates on when I'm posting my newest videos, but I also do fun little free giveaways to my subscribers. So if you haven't already, make sure you comment if you have a question or simply subscribe to our channel, and I will see you next time.